We're now going to look at the budgeting process in a little bit more detail and look at specific categories and setting up monthly budgets based on the amount of money we use and the amount of money we actually have coming in. So there's two big words that we need to know for this, and you might have come across these in social studies when you're talking about governments and how they spend their money. One of them is a surplus. The surplus is when the amount of money that you actually make is less than the money that you are spending. So every month you actually have money to save or money to put away for something. That's a surplus. If you're budgeting and you have a deficit, that means you're actually spending more money than you make in a month or in a year. So you're actually losing money and getting into the hole. And then you're going to start looking into certain things like needing a loan, or maybe getting into a situation where you need to do those expensive payday loans. So we're going to look at some examples here, talk about how we can do some budgeting. The first example lays out Kate, and it says she's working and she has a salary of $2,259.09 per month. She kept track of her monthly expenses for a period of 6 months. So an effective budget, you're going to actually look and say, okay, over a period of time, how much money was I actually spending on certain categories? Because we did talk about some expenses are recurring, so you know that they're happening every month and they're basically the same amount. Sometimes there's variable expenses like gas for your car or eating out at a restaurant, and sometimes there's just unexpected expenses, which would kind of fall into this last category here of miscellaneous, things that you might not have actually budgeted for, but you needed to spend money on. So she laid out a 6-month period, and we could see how much she's spending in April, May, June on each one of these categories. But the first question says, use this information to calculate her monthly expenses, her average monthly expenses for each category. So you have to remember that an average means taking all of the numbers in that one category, or in that one item in this case, adding it up and dividing by however many months we're talking about. So in this time, we're talking about 6-month periods. So we're going to get a total, and then we're going to add it up, divide it by 6, and figure out what their average is. Now, if we look at the first category of rent here, each time the rent is $450. So her average is exactly $450. We don't have to do much to calculate it. So her rent per month, her average is $450 a month. It never changes. So now when we look at her utilities, the next one, we could see that the totals in each month are fluctuating. So we should now actually calculate this average. So I'm going to do a few of these averages together with you, and then we're going to let you pause the video and do the rest of the averages on your own. So if I'm looking at utilities and phone, I'm on the calculator now. I'm going to add up all the expenses. So I have the 150, the 125, the next one's also a 125, then a 155, a 150, and a 200. So we're saying in 6 months, if I added all this up, in 6 months, she spent a total of $905, but her average is, take that divided by 6 months. So on average, every month on her utilities and the car payment, all those, sorry, not the car payment, but the phone and the cable and all that, her average amount she spends each month is $150.83. Remembering, money is to 2 decimal places. We'll do another one here together. We'll say, let's look at her groceries. So her groceries, again, over a 6-month period, we're going to add up all of those totals. So we have $260 plus the $300 plus the $100 plus $275 plus $150 and plus $125. Now it's important now I get this total and hit enter, because our calculator can make some mistakes if we don't look at the total first. So I'm saying in those 6 months, in total, she spent $1,210. But divide that by 6 months to get how much she spent roughly each month on average. It's about $201.67. So for her groceries, we have $201.67. So then if we look at the car payment now, her car payment every month, 175, 175, 100, every one is 175. So her average for her car payment, don't even need to do a calculation, it is $175. So now what I want you to do is go through, we have the gas, the restaurant, entertainment, car, clothing, and this miscellaneous. I want you to pause the video at this time, and I want you to come up and with all the averages for those other categories. So add up the total, hit equals, then divide by 6 months to figure out on average how much is she spending each month on those totals. So pause the video now, get the totals, and then restart the video. So now when we look at these averages, when we come back to the video, we can see the remaining that you were left in charge of here. The gas payment for her vehicle is $110.83 per month on average. The restaurant, $116.67. Entertainment, $180.83. Her insurance, $115. Clothing, $93.33. And the miscellaneous cost here is $66.67. Now, the question doesn't ask this, but we're going to look at it anyways. We're going to say, is she running a surplus? Like, is she spending less than she actually makes? Or is she running a deficit? Are her expenses more than she's actually earning each month? So if we were to total all these up, and I did that work for you, the total that she has in expenses right now is $1,600.83. So that's what her expenses are. The amount she makes, if we look above here, is just over $2,200. So she's making $2,200, only spending $1,683. She has a surplus budget. She's actually spending less money than she's bringing in. So that's a great sign when you're budgeting. Now down here, this takes a little bit different turn for us. It says, create a possible conservative budget for Kate. Now, conservative budget means that you want to just look at what she's doing in these past 6 months that we have the totals for and say, let's just keep everything on course. No big spending sprees coming up or anything. It says if she has a surplus, which we already established, it says allocate that extra money to savings. So we know we can find how much she's going to put into savings at the end of this. Now, when we're talking about a conservative budget, what we actually want to end up doing is we want to look at her income. We want to say we're going to understate how much money she actually makes. So we just looked at, she makes about $2,200 and $2,259. So if we underestimate the income, we'll say, you know what, let's say a little bit under that. She's making about $2,200 a month. Okay, so if she's understating that income, she's making $2,200 a month. We don't want to go over top of that. Then we always, when we're looking at our expenses, we want to say, let's overstate our expenses. So if we know what they're going to cost, maybe we should just say a little bit more, just in case there's something that comes up that we need to look at in the future. So if we're going to overstate our expenses, we're going to list all those categories again, the rent and so on and so forth. And we're going to look at what our average was, and we're going to just estimate a little bit more if it's a variable amount. So here are the categories that she has right now for expenses. And we're going to go in and overstate basically how much she has to spend on it, unless it's a recurring amount that she knows for sure. So if we look at rent, back here, her monthly rent was $450, but that was $450 each and every month. So we don't need to overstate that. We can just say, you know what, $450, that's how much she's going to spend on rent every month. Now utilities varied from month to month. So right now it's saying $150.83. Let's overstate that a little bit. Let's say, you know what, on utilities, she's going to spend roughly $155 a month. So we just go a little bit over. On her groceries, again, if we look up at groceries, $201.67. Let's go over that just a little bit and say we're going to go to $205 on her groceries. Her car payment was something that was the exact same each and every month, so we can just keep that at $175. Her gas, again, if we look up at the gas, $110. So let's just go a little bit over that, and let's say gas prices fluctuate, maybe $120. We'll state a little bit more. Her restaurant, if we look up again, was $116. So we could say that's about $120. Entertainment, $180, so let's budget about $185. Her insurance was $115 each and every time on her car. So if we look at the insurance, it didn't change. So we're just going to budget $115 for that. And then we're going to look at her clothing. Her clothing was about $93.33, and she didn't buy it every month. So let's say about $95 a month. And her miscellaneous, $66.67. So we'll just up that to $70, and we're looking at our budget. So we'll fill those in. The restaurant we said was about $120. The entertainment, we'd say let's budget about $185 a month. Her insurance for the car, that was a recurring one. It's the same each and every month, so $115. $95 a month for clothes, we'll estimate. And then for the miscellaneous, we'll say, well, let's just up that to about $70. So once we have these totals, we should make sure, or these monthly averages, we should make sure that we still are running a surplus. We're not all of a sudden in a deficit situation. So if we add all these up, that's about $1,690 a month in expenses. That's still good. She's still doing way less than, or spending way less than she makes. So if we talk about on average, how much can she save? Well, if her income was, we said approximately $2,200, and she's spending approximately $1,690 each month, if you subtracted those, you'd see she has about $510 per month surplus. So money still sitting in her account that she could now put towards savings. So when we're looking at a budget, it's important to know what we're actually spending on average. So look at the last few months that you're actually spending some money, get some averages, and come up with some kind of situation that you can afford. If for some reason this expense exceeded or was more than how much money you're actually making, you're going to have to look at each one of these categories and start to say, all right, where can I start to change my spending habits? I could probably eat less in a restaurant. I could probably do less for entertainment. The car payment, the insurance, the rent, I can't do that. The utilities, I have to pay those. But there's certain categories you could probably knock some expenses down if you're running a deficit budget. So the second example has Manny. He has two part-time jobs. One, he works 20 hours a week and earns $12.75 an hour. And the second, he works 15 hours per week and works $18.20 an hour. He's created a budget and expects to save 10% of his salary. How many weeks will it take him to save $900? So we're going to look at this in two situations here. We're going to first talk about each job. So we have job one and we have job two, because it says he's working at two separate jobs. In job one, he earns $12.75 an hour and he works about 20 hours a week. So if we were to look at the total he makes at job one, we would see he's making about $255 per week at job one. Now job two, he earns a little bit more money. He gets $18.20 an hour and he only works 15 hours there. So his total, if we were to multiply these, he makes about $273 a week at job two. So we should try to figure out how much is he making in total at these two jobs. So per week, if he has $255 at job one plus the $273 at job two, his total income per week is $528 per week. So this is how much Manny brings home every week, roughly. Now it's saying he's already created a budget. We don't know it, but he says on his budget, he can save 10% of what he makes each week. So we got to go and figure out what is 10% of this 528. Now when we work with percents, we're going to say here's 528. 10%, we're going to convert that to a decimal. That's 0.10. So for savings each week, he can save approximately $52.80 if we divide that. This is week, and this is talking about how much he can put in each week into savings. So about just under $53. But the question asks us, if we go and look back, it's saying how long is it going to take him to actually save 900 bucks? So he's saving about $52.80 each week. Now we're saying he wants $900. So all we have to do now is say, well, if he wants to save $900 and each week he can save $52.80. So if we divide these two and we say 900 divided by $52.80, whoops, divided by $52.80 each week, in approximately 17 weeks, he'd save $900. So in about 17 weeks, 17, 18 weeks, he'd have $900 saved. So based on his budget, this is what we figured out. So we did have to go back and use some of our skills from Math 10 to figure out how much he got paid each week here, how much he got paid each week here, total it up, find the 10% of what he was making, and figure out how many weeks that would take him.